there I was after college. I had barely gotten a diploma by the grace of God. Made a lot of really bad life choices, and had put myself in a really horrible position. And I didn't know what to do. I was lost. And so I had kind of turned back to the church. I was raised in the church my whole life, but I'd kind of finally turned back to the church after college, just desperately looking for something to get my life back on track. And one morning at my home church that I was raised in, I ran into a lady who was a volunteer. That's probably not the right word, but when I was in the youth ministry, she volunteered, but she was definitely someone in my life who I consider a huge mentor and disciple maker for me. And I asked her if I could come over one day and kind of tell her what was going on with me. And she, of course, said yes. And so there I was sitting in her living room. And the next thing I know, I am sobbing uncontrollably, pouring my guts out to her and telling her all this awful stuff that I had done and all these horrible decisions I made and how I had just made a mess of my life completely. And I'll never forget what she said. She looked me in the eye and she said, "Wilson, you know, we're not defined by our past, but God can use that. He can use your past if you'll let it, if you'll humble yourself enough to let it." And I thought that was interesting, humility. And at that point, I did have a college diploma, but I had no job. And so she offered to get me a job at the church. And I agreed. And little did I know that job was washing dishes in the kitchen. Talk about humility. About that time, they brought on a new youth director. Was an older guy who had a lot of experience. And he did a winter retreat, and I went along with him as just a chaperone, nothing else. And when we got back off the bus, he looked at me and said, "Hey, I wasn't only getting to know kids at this retreat, I was also looking at how different adults interacted with kids, and I would like to talk to you about bringing you on staff here at church to work for the youth ministry." And the Holy Spirit moved in that time and just worked in my heart and lit a fire in my heart that I didn't even know could be lit that way. And that was it. I was hooked, and that was my calling. And I knew that's what I was called to do, and I knew that that was the story God had written for me, and that was the purpose for my life, was to help other students, young students, find the hope, love, peace, and grace that Jesus Christ offers, and to help them not make the same mistakes that I did.